In this small lecture, I will talk about digital learning spaces. More specifically, I will ask the question, can they be an alternative to traditional learning management systems? So in today's presentation, I will talk about traditional learning management systems and their limitations. I will also talk about personal learning, teaching environments, and connected to this, digital learning spaces. And then I will look at the use of web technologies, personal learning environments, and personal teaching environments to deliver and manage an online English course. So first of all, let's look at traditional learning management systems. They are commonplace in third level institutions. I think 90–95% of European, North American institutions will be using traditional learning management systems such as Blackboard, Desire2Learn, Moodle. The good thing about these systems is that they have a standardized interface and tools. So it's very easy for faculty to learn how to use the learning management systems. It's very easy from the EdTech perspective as well to train people in using them. They also have a centrally managed interface for managing the learning. So we have gradebooks in there, we have assessments, we have assignments. So it's very easy to manage students' learning centrally. The result, which may be good, may be bad, depending on how you look at it, is that courses have a similar look and functionality. So for quality control in a university, maybe yes, this is what you want. From a creative perspective, it's maybe you don't want to have a similar look and functionality. Maybe you want to have something different so that students don't get bored. Limitations. Traditional learning management systems resulted from the boom in computer-based learning in the 1990s. So people wanted a way to control this learning, manage this learning. So more from an administrative perspective, learning management systems were developed. There's less pedagogical thinking gone into it, it's more administrative thinking. What we see in most courses being used now in my institution as well, that content distribution and administrative tools, for example the gradebook, are being used a lot more than the interactive ones. Yes, there are wikis, there are blogs in learning management systems, but they aren't being used as much as the simple content distribution. Limited creativity. Faculty tend to use the same tools. Training programs are based on these tools as well, so yes, it restricts creativity. Sometimes they can be too bulky. If you look at Blackboard Vista now, we've got a huge amount of tools in there. Faculty aren't using them. They just focus on some of the common tools like the assessment, assignments, uploading content. And because they have become so bulky over the last decade, they've become very, very expensive. Blackboard is quite expensive. Moodle is free, but you have to install it on your own service and you have to have a bit of technical expertise in the college to make sure it runs properly. There are some further limitations as well. These limitations are probably more important from my perspective. For example, courses are time-bound. Students are enrolled in one semester. They cannot go back to a course once they've finished it. They cannot look ahead at courses as well. Courses are also walled off. There's very little interaction between students on one course and students on another course. There's very little interaction between students in a course and the internet as a whole. Finally, courses on traditional learning management systems can be very teacher-centric. The teacher presents the content, uploads content. There may be use of a discussion forum, and finally there's an assessment process. So traditional learning management systems are sort of reinforcing traditional pedagogies of present, assess. These limitations have resulted in fewer opportunities for extended learning. Students cannot, excuse me, once students have finished their course, they cannot go back into it. Fewer opportunities for collaboration because of the walled off nature of the courses. Students cannot work with people from other courses or from other learning environments. All of this negates the learning potential resulting from the network effect. The more people in the network, the more learning opportunities you have. Traditional learning management systems perhaps diminish that network effect. So what are the alternatives? In this lecture I'm talking about the personal learning environment, personal teaching environment and digital learning space. So what is a personal learning environment? Well, in a personal learning environment, the services and tools used daily by students, for example, Facebook, blogs, wikis, whatever, these are all used as part of their learning environment as well. The applications are mostly free web applications. Yes, you can get premium packages now, but for what I want to do in the learning environment, most of the applications are free. It's also important to remember that they're not just a collection of software. We're not just putting software packages together. There's a strong social element in it as well. So we're talking about people interacting with content, people interacting with other people as well, which is important. They do support extended and informal learning. They're not restricted to one course. So students, when they set up the personal learning environment, that can be used for 4 years in college. It can be used after college. If it's for somebody who's in the work environment, they can set up a personal learning environment which they can use then to learn as well. And finally, it can be combined with formal learning. It can be used for a lot of different things. Students can study different courses, but when they're in the university, they can use the personal learning environment as well. Next question is, how personal is a personal learning environment? The very nature of the name suggests that all the learning should be learner driven. But then what is the role of the traditional education provider? Is it not our role to provide sort of guidance and materials as well? So there's this gap between what sort of level of the level of personal learning environment. One way to get around this is to use a thing called a personal teaching environment and digital learning spaces. So if, for example, in a personal teaching environment, it's the educator, the mainstream educator, select the learning resources and the tools. After that, learners will have their own PLEs. So yes, they want to be part of this personal teaching environment, but they can use their own blogs, they can use their own wikis, they can use whatever to interact with this personal teaching environment. Personal learning environments, important, they're not restricted to one course as Blackboard would restrict students. So students, once they've set up the personal learning environment, they can use this for the whole course of their studies. A personal teaching environment excuse me, is part of the educator's wider personal learning environment. So for example, I set up a course for my students. This is a personal teaching environment. But I can use this course for professional development courses for other educators. I can write research articles on this course, and then that would become part of my PLE where other people are able to experience this as well. And by combining all these personal learning environments and personal teaching environments into one area, we create this open learning ecosystem, or an educational digital learning space. In this learning space, teachers become learners. Also, learners become teachers. So the content that learners are generating can be used by fellow learners to become to learn more, basically. So yes, the role of teachers and learners is not as distinct anymore. So let's have a look at this here in more detail. As you can see here, this is my personal teaching environment, and students' personal learning environments interacts with my personal teaching environment. But it's not just restricted to this area here. They can also, by use of their tools, they can interact with a variety of other people as well. So it's not just interacting with students on the course and their teacher, but they have opportunities to interact with lots of other people via their tools in their personal learning environments. Similarly, in my personal teaching environment, it's part of a larger personal learning environment. So the data and research from this environment plugs into my academic papers, it plugs into my blog entries. I also use examples in my professional development courses. So what we have now is this huge learning ecosystem here. Let me just go back. So to design a personal teaching environment, I had to actually pick a specific English course, and I picked this course I called Web to English. It's basically using Web 2.0 technologies to develop the English course. The objectives of the course from the student objectives were to improve their English and to improve their computer skills. My objective was to show that Web 2.0 tools could be used to deliver and manage an online course. The outline of the course, it was a 12-week course. I think there were 10 modules, 10 learning modules. There was one orientation module where the students learnt about the different tools they had to use on the course. The students, this was interesting, the students were non-formal. I work in a university here, but I couldn't design a course that I was happy with for my regular students. There were restrictions because of the curriculum I had to follow, the assessments I had to take, and online learning had to be delivered using Blackboard Vista. So I couldn't really develop the course I wanted to within the college. So I asked some wives of faculty members from around the world. We had one Chinese, 2 Korean, a Japanese, a Thai, a Colombian, all in the age from between 30 and 50, so they weren't digital natives. So these were the students on the course. Their computer skills were limited, so this was a challenge as well. The goal of the course was to not base the learning activities on the tools available, as what happens in maybe a traditional learning management system, but to think about the pedagogy first, think about what I wanted to do, what I wanted to teach, then design the learning activities, and then select the tools which would allow me to deliver these learning activities. This is where personal learning environments and teaching environments are a lot more flexible than traditional learning management systems. So let's have a look at the course now in a bit more detail. So this is the link here, web2english.wordpress.com. So let me have a look at this. So here's the course now. What I used was a WordPress blog. This acts as the portal. So on the main page of the blog, down here we have all the learning modules. Okay, I've highlighted this learning module here, module 8. So they have the reading activity, linked to the text, linked to the learning activity. There's a reading comprehension quiz as well, just for formal assessment. Listening text, practice text, and again a quiz there as well. There's a writing activity. They have to post on Twitter. Once they finish the writing activity, they must post it in a blog, and they must read other students' contributions. They also must make a podcast, and then finally, in collaboration, they have to make a presentation in Google Docs. So I can deliver all the materials here. For example, we talked about the tweets, so I have all the students' latest tweets go along here as well. All the tools that students use on the course are down here on the right hand side. So we're using Edmodo. So when I want to give a little more detail to learning activities, I use Edmodo. ClassMarker I use for the reading and listening comprehension quizzes. SurveyMonkey, at the end of every module I do a survey for feedback. Twitter, which they use on a daily basis. Blogger, when they finish the writing activity, they post to Blogger. Google Docs is when they do the collaboration on the presentation, and my podcast is used for student podcasts. Finally, we have the web resources. So I use the British Council for Reading, lo.org for listening, and then edufine.com for grammar. So on this portal, the WordPress blog, I can select any tools that I want to select. This is what makes it a personal teaching environment or personal learning environment. I'm not restricted to the tools of a traditional learning management system. I also use things like NetVibes. NetVibes is an aggregator where I don't have to go searching for all the students' work. Anytime they publish something new, it appears in NetVibes. Also, I use a tool called Dipity, which again, nothing too special about it, but it gives a visual display of all the work. So let's see if it comes up here now for us. Okay, let's just click on the timeline. Hopefully something will load up. Here we go. So that just gives a visual display of all the students' work. So I can click on here. I think this is very important as well. The visual nature of it encourages students to look at other students' work. So this gives me a written record of all the students' work. I can also do it within NetVibes as well. So NetVibes, you can have a public or private one. So what we're seeing here is something similar. We have all the students' blogs here, we've got the students' podcast here, and then we have their presentations, which are done on Google Docs. So these aggregators are a great way of letting the information come to you and giving it a space for everybody can go and look at everybody else's work. So it's very convenient to use aggregators. Let's just close that down now and go back to Web2 English. So as you can see, it's a very flexible sort of format to deliver your materials. Also, you're not just restricted to one page here. You can add extra pages for things which you normally put into a course outline, a course schedule, and very important, the rubrics. Okay, students need to know how they're going to be marked. So all of this information can be put into a WordPress blog, a portal, and I think it's a lot more convenient than traditional learning management systems. Okay, so let's go back to the course. I looked at that. We've just looked at that. So I want to talk now about Web2 English and how it functions as part of a digital learning space. Well, first of all, this is my personal teaching environment. As you can see here, I've selected all these various tools which help me deliver my courses. A student personal learning environment is very, very similar. Okay, in the case of my students, they weren't very computer literate, so I selected the learning materials for them. The difference between my one, if I look back here, okay, most of my tools are for production. The students, most of the tools are for consumption. So all of these tools here, students use it to access resources. But they also have some production tools as well. So for example, Twitter, Blogger, my podcast and Google Docs allow students to produce. And this is the important thing about using Web 2.0 technologies. They allow students to produce as well. And what they produce can become learning resources. Edmodo here is a mixture of the two. I put resources on Edmodo, but students can contribute. Edmodo it's like a social networking platform as well. I prefer to call it a social learning platform. So if we had it in isolation, personal teaching environments and personal learning environments, they are mechanisms for controlling online learning, okay, if it's in isolation. So yes, here, if I just want to restrict it to this, there's very little interaction with the outside world. But in reality, PTEs and PLEs don't exist in isolation. They exist as part of a larger digital learning space. As I mentioned before, my personal teaching environment feeds into these different areas here, which are being interacted with other people. So people are interacting with content, my content, they're also interacting with me. So this becomes a huge digital learning space as well. Similarly, students are interacting with lots of other people as well. So other students are using British Council. They set up forums there on British Council. My students can access those forums as well. Hence they're getting more learning opportunities. Same with lo.org. And also people may, by chance, read their blogs or listen to their podcasts. So what we're doing now, in isolation, yes, a personal teaching environment does control online learning, but it's not used in isolation. It's used in a wider environment, in a wider digital learning space. Creates lots of learning opportunities. The network effect is in place here and gives students more opportunities to learn and more opportunities for them to produce, and these learning materials are being used as well by other students. Okay, I can conclude now. At the end of the Web2 English course, I did a survey. Students agreed that their English and computing skills improved. 4 out of the 5 students agreed that learning online was a good way to learn. The 5th student maybe felt that her English skills were a little weak and she needed more face-to-face work. It showed that web technologies, particularly Web 2.0 technology, can be used to successfully deliver and manage online courses. It also showed that students can interact more in a course. It showed the value of students being able to produce their own materials that could be used by their peers. Was it a success? I would say yes, But I do have some concerns. Students hadn't used traditional learning management systems, so they weren't able to compare between the two. Students' personal learning environment, sorry, that's a mistake, should be personal learning environments, became dormant afterwards. I put this down to the fact that the students they were informal students and they weren't learning on a regular basis. So once they stopped doing Web 2 English, they had no need to use their personal learning environment. There is a need to set up digital learning spaces, personal teaching environments and such, informal learning environments. So, for example, in my college here in the Higher College of Technology, there is a need for me to experiment a bit more with it. I have started using it last semester. I've used it with on a grammar course I taught. I'm also using it with my professional development courses that I deliver to faculty here. But again, I think we need to do it in more of a large scale environment. There is resistance to digital learning spaces at institutional and faculty level. Again, learning management systems, traditional learning management systems are good at centrally managing the learning. If we open it up, maybe that learning cannot be managed as effectively. I would disagree with that, but again, that's another point for argument. Also, the opening up of resources, there may be resistance. Faculty may not want the resources open to other people. Colleges may not want to open up resources as well. One way to get around this is to use traditional LMS as part of a digital learning space. So for example, you could use a digital learning space to deliver the content and have students interact. But the learning management system then could be used for assessments, could be used for discussion forums, and again, you could use the gradebook in there. Another way is to add web technologies to learning management systems. So for example, you'd have add-ins to maybe Moodle or Blackboard where students could access blogs, students could access various portals and whatever. So there has to be more integration between the two. Okay, that's about all now. If you've any questions, you can post to my blog. Thank you very much for listening.